With the rise to power in Germany in 1933, the German National Socialists sought to control all spheres of society. At the same time, the actions of the functionaries of the Hitler's party were often very contradictory. To gain the support of conservative circles and the German bourgeoisie, the Nazis advocated for traditional family values, declaring a fight against debauchery, prostitution, and non-traditional sexual relationships. At the same time, to attract young people, activists and propagandists of the NSDAP took the ancient Greek and ancient Roman approach as an example, glorifying the beauty of the naked human body, introducing a fashion for athletic physique, and promoting a sports lifestyle and the cult of the body. Contradictions. Overall, the entire domestic policy of the Nazis was woven with contradictions. This also concerned relations between the sexes and intimacy. On the one hand, there were family values, but on the other hand, German women were supposed to give birth to as many future soldiers for the Führer as possible. And they could do this with different men, including from extramarital relationships. The main criterion here was the racial origin of the father. Starting in 1935, the Nazis made some concessions for priests of free love. Concurrently, the SS, led by Reichsfuhrer Heinrich Himmler, began to take free love under their obsessive control. Nazi leaders quickly realized that prostitution was a very convenient and useful tool for them to control the mindset of Germans, and at the same time to regulate the sexual relations of military personnel, in order to prevent promiscuous relationships, same-sex relations, and the spread of venereal diseases. At the same time, the Nazis' bigwig launched a comprehensive program to create exemplary Aryan families. The questions of modeling the Aryan family were dealt with by high-ranking German officials. Various tools were used for these purposes. For example, hereditary courts established by the Nazis to study the ancestry of future spouses. If the court members were convinced that there were no racial tainting familial connections with representatives of inferior peoples in the family of the couple wishing to marry, the court would approve such a union. Family. An entire program was created to support racially pure families, including single mothers who became pregnant by soldiers or officers, whether they were still living or had died in later wars. The main criterion here, again, was not the stamp in the passport, but the national purity of the biological parents' blood. Marriage with foreigners were practically forbidden for Germans. Exceptions were made only for racial similar peoples: the English, the Swiss, the Dutch, the Flemings, the peoples of Northern Europe. Lebensborn. However, the upcoming war introduced its own adjustments. Apparently, due to the fact that in the matter of childbirth, German women did not manage to reproduce future soldiers for the Reich in the necessary quantity, the Nazis developed and implemented the Lebensborn project, the source of life. The original goal was that German, Norwegian, and Danish women, by ideological and patriotic beliefs, should refuse abortions and bear children from SS members. Such women were settled in special boarding houses and provided for at expense of the treasury. At the same time, it was not required to raise the children if the woman didn't want to. They were placed in a foster family. A woman who gave birth to 4 children in this way was awarded the Mother's Cross. From 1935 to 1938 in Germany, 8,000 children were born under the Lebensborn program, and in Norway, 12,000. The organizers of the project had no interest in the questions of intimate relationships and feelings. The task was purely biological, a sort of biofactory for producing Aryans. However, this was only the first stage of this program and relatively harmless. Child abduction. This began with the outbreak of World War II by Germany. A special SS unit took up the inhumane and vile theft of children from other peoples of the occupied countries. Children who, according to external features, fit the Nazi standards of true Aryans, mostly between the ages 1 and 6 years, were removed from Polish, Czech, and Soviet families, or kidnapped and sent to Germany to be raised by German families. By such brutal methods, only from the territories of the USSR occupied by the fascist, SS child hunters took away, according to various data, from 40 to 50,000 children, most of whom got lost somewhere in Germany and never returned to their homeland. And even within this program, there are obvious contradictions in the policies of the Nazi leaders. On the one hand, the Nazis fiercely guarded the purity of Aryan blood and prohibited Germans from having intimate relations with non-Aryan people, according to the Nazis. On the other hand, they stole and took children from peoples in order to raise them as Aryans. In this connection, it was a notable case when one not too bright mother a nun purely of German origin turned to the Nazi newspaper Volkische Beobachter, People's Observer, with the question of whether her son could marry a pure-blooded German woman if the young people love each other and are already engaged. The response was purely fascist. Both young people, the failed newlyweds, were sent to concentration camps for re-education. At the same time, children stolen from other peoples were placed in native German families. However, even in Nazi Germany under the watchful eye of the Gestapo, it turned out to be impossible to take total control of all aspects of life, especially the intimate sphere. Moreover, many of the Nazi bigwigs were not without sin themselves. So what about the top of the Reich? The sexual exploits of the Nazi number 2 Hermann Göring were not secret to anyone in the Luftwaffe. At the same time, according to the gossip of Göring's subordinates, he liked women who drink, smoke, and swear. In other words, those kinds who people usually call trash. True or not, the rumors and gossip about the Luftwaffe chief's proclivities turned out to be very persistent. Cheating on his wife, including with women of Slavic origin, was a common thing for Joseph Goebbels. This, however, did not prevent the Goebbels family from being considered a model German family. Firstly, due to Hitler's favorite, with no romantic involvement, Magda Goebbels, who was certainly aware of her husband's affairs but unwaveringly maintained the family home. They said that Dr. Goebbels was scolded by the Führer himself, and more than once for his sexual intemperance. The grey eminence of the Reich, Heinrich Himmler, was also not original in his weaknesses. He had an affair with a secretary and a typist. The Reichsfuhrer kept a mistress referred to as his second wife, who bore the top SS officer's son and a daughter. Himmler's involved wife Marga, like most wives of Nazi bigwigs, was forced to play the role of a successful keeper of the heart of the worthy German family. Heinrich Himmler's deputy and the Führer's favorite, Reinhard Heydrich, was generally a pervert with sadistic tendencies, and his prostitute partners had to endure quite a lot to satisfy their elite clan. Is it worth being surprised by the two-faced and hypocritical behavior of Nazi leaders? For the Führer had beforehand issued them all an indulgence for their sins. Despite the Germans' media efforts to create myth about the Nazi leaders, ordinary Germans suspected a lot. You can't hide an all in a sack. As a result, life in Hitler's Germany was filled with doublethink. This affected all aspects of life in Nazi Germany, including often love and intimate relationships.